Hi everyone. I want to give you a little bit of insight into research here in the beginning. I'm going to provide you from time to time some PowerPoints that I found helpful to my in-class, in-person students, and I'm hoping that you'll find them helpful as well. So this first one is really more of an introduction to research. It reviews a little bit from Chapter 1, and it goes into a little bit from Chapter 2. I want to let you know that researchers and social workers have not always gotten along. As a matter of fact, many social workers today have been resistant to research, including evidence-based practice. This is due to a couple of reasons. One, practitioners saw researchers as out of touch with real-world issues, meaning that they didn't really understand what was going on in direct practice in today in contemporary society. The second problem that comes up, or the second reason why researchers and social workers, really direct service social workers, didn't get along, is that researchers noted that practitioners rarely became involved in research, nor was the use of research by practitioners very consistent. So researchers tended to be from academia, meaning colleges or universities, who were said to be out of touch with reality, and social workers were thought to have a lack of interest in research, even when the research disagreed with what they knew was true, believing that research had no place in real-life situations due to its abstract nature. So basically, researchers didn't think that social work practitioners took research seriously. But we need both. We need to understand that the interventions that we're using are effective. We need to know that they won't cause harm. We need to know from research how many of this or what factors contribute to this phenomena. And research can give us that. Research also provides us credibility. So you're studying research not just because you have to, but because research is necessary to make informed decisions concerning clients. It is used to make good decisions, regardless of the level. So if you're in a micro, meso, or macro level, you could use research to guide your decision making. Research is also provides you with the ways to critically examine existing research. It helps you to understand how to evaluate research for credibility, meaning, is this intervention, this new technique, is this something I should use, or could this possibly harm my client? Research can let us know that. And then the last one, which is something I mentioned before, is that it lends credibility to the profession. So by conducting research, we are providing credibility to our social work profession. And you know what? We need to do that. We need to do that more and more. So what is research? Basically, it's a means of gaining knowledge. So we do research to learn more about things. Epistemology is the science of knowing things. And methodology, which you will learn about this quarter a little bit, and then in next quarter in Research 2, you'll learn a little bit more about methodology. But this is the way we know things. Do we do an interview? Do we do a survey? Did we have a questionnaire? Did we observe things? So it's the way that we know things. It's kind of the recipe. Evidence-based practice is something that you had to formally write out in your discussion post. Basically, what evidence-based practice is that it is the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and then making decisions based on the knowledge that you gained from that. Looking at all the evidence that was presented, and then making a judicious decision based on that evidence that you were presented with. Social work research, we're using methods, research methods to solve human problems. So we're looking at human issues, things that affect everyone every day, like poverty. What are the factors that contribute to poverty? How do adolescents gain access to whatever it is that we think they're gaining access to? What interventions work best with elderly who are suffering from Alzheimer's? So all different kinds of things. So how does EBP differ from other type of research? Well, EBP, remember, this is existing research. We want to take into consideration what we already know, what expertise we have, and the values and preferences of our clients. All of these things work together to help us better understand the phenomena that we're trying to understand. Now, how do we know all these things that we know? How do we gain that knowledge? Well, there are many different ways to do that. I want to share with you 5, but your textbook adds in a couple of different ones as well. So please take those into consideration as well. So the 5 pathways that I'm going to talk about are values and tradition, intuition, practice, experience and logic, authority, and science. So let's look at tradition first. Tradition, for example, when you first begin an internship, you receive suggestions and recommendations on how to assist your clients, such as what has been done in the past and continues to be done today. Perhaps you are completing your internship in a substance abuse center, finding that the professionals with their vast experience suggest a certain method or treatment that has been successful in the past, meaning they have used this treatment over and over again and found that it works. So they're suggesting that you use this as well. What if after conducting research and looking at the client you've been working with, you see a different method that you feel might work? You may find that your supervisors and professionals around you are unreceptive, maybe even hostile, and could be resistant to you using that new method. They know what works with you, this client population, because it has worked for years. Thus, tradition, based on values and beliefs, may be quite useful, but it can also be limiting. As you can see, if they're not open to change, that can also be limiting. What we need to do is differentiate between what is knowledge and what is belief. So when we're looking at values and traditions, that's what we're trying to do. Knowledge is based on fact and observation. Beliefs are facts that are acquired through tradition and authority. So they can be helpful, but they also can be limiting. Intuition is insight. So what are you doing with intuition? You know something because you intuitively know it. You haven't had training in that. You haven't had any education. There's really no reasoning involved. You just intuitively know that to be so. So let's look at an example. Home visit shows an elderly man with bruises on his face and arms. What do? Do you act on this, ask more questions, or do you leave? Intuition, you know something without knowing how you know it. What is the difference between intuition and professional judgment? Professional judgment is based on facts that are supplemented with experience. Thus, in the case of the elderly man with bruises on his face and arms, at this point, the only facts you have are the bruises on his face and arms. Your professional judgment will guide you to further questioning so that you can make an informed decision regarding all the facts. Professional judgment in this case encourages the social worker to pursue specific lines of investigation, because your professional judgment is saying, you know what, I need to ask more questions. How did he get these bruises? What, did he take a fall? Is he having balance issues? Or is he being abused? It prevents you from making a snap judgment. So rather than relying on intuition, we may want to look at professional judgment, because professional judgment is a conscious process. And that brings us to practice, experience, and logic. So with practice, experience, and logic, these are things that we knew to direct experience or because they make sense. This is firsthand knowledge, personal participation. It's experience that can guide the present and future actions. We may also call this practice wisdom. There are reasons why we should not rely solely on practice, experience, or logic. Experience can blind you to other paths. For example, you work with children, may find that monies and services need to be spent on healthcare for children. However, equally important may be aging and healthcare treatment. Your own biases may prevent you from seeing the issues of others. Thus, in order to address, the social worker must be acutely aware of our own biases in order to take into account the experiences of others. So we need to be open. Basically, when we're talking about practice experience, we need to make sure that we're open and ready. And I have 2 more I want to talk about before I end this. Be sure to review all of the PowerPoint as you go along. It may be helpful to you in understanding what the textbook is explaining. It's a good supplement anyway. So the last 2 I want to talk about, the first one is authority. We know something because somebody, an expert or somebody outside of us, told us that it was so. A medical opinion versus maybe scientific evidence. We have to make a determination. The problem with authority is that sometimes the experts may make mistakes. Sometimes experts are just merely stating an opinion and that it's not a scientifically based evidence. So that's where you have to kind of weigh that, and you have to use logic, you have to use common sense, you have to use your practice wisdom, and you have to use science. Science is guided by some norms. I have them listed here, and I'd like you to become aware of them because they might help you as you begin to understand research. Please note that research is like learning a new language. At first, you may get very frustrated, but hang in there. We'll all get through it. So let's get back to science. The norms of science are universalism, organized skepticism, disinterestedness, communalism, honesty, empirical, objective, provisional knowledge, dissemination, and the employment of rules, procedures, and techniques. Each of these in their own way help us to better understand how to gain evidence, how to understand that evidence that gain, and using a process of finding that evidence and interpreting that evidence. One last thing I want to mention is the errors in understanding. These are errors in how we develop our knowledge. There are many things that can go wrong in a research study. That's why we do our best to prevent these errors in understanding from happening. There are 8 of them: inaccurate observations, overgeneralizations, selective observations, made-up information, ex post facto, illogical reasoning, premature close of inquiry, and mystification. That's about it I want to share with you, at least verbally. I hope that you will take a look at the rest of this PowerPoint and be sure to ask any questions that you might have regarding research, regarding the chapter information, the external resources that you'll be reading throughout the quarter, any of the assignments that you have. We'll be talking about quantitative and qualitative research throughout. You've also had some readings on hypothesis. Well, please take the time, go over this PowerPoint, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.